In 1975, Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham joined Fleetwood Mac in a move that would change the band's sound forever. Whether that was a good thing or a bad thing is for you to argue about in the comments below. The story of Fleetwood Mac actually starts in London in the late 1960s. Peter Green, who was an incredibly talented, creative and influential character, formed the band. He was one of the greatest British blues musicians around at that time, and his vision and raw emotion would lay the foundation for everything the band would become.
I would like to thank Mr. Peter Green for forming Fleetwood Mac way back in 1967. Thank you, Peter.
He, John McVie and Mick Fleetwood had all been members of John Mayall's Blues Breakers and had earned a respectable reputation among the blues scene in London. They, along with slide guitarist Jeremy Spencer, splintered off to form a new band, and they found success almost immediately. They formed in a time when blues was booming in Britain, and Fleetwood Mac very much started out as a London blues band. They made an immediate impact. Their debut self-titled album reached number 4 in the UK and stayed in the chart for a year. They'd also released Black Magic Woman in 1968.
Yes, I got a black magic woman, got me so blind I can't see.
And the number 1 single, Albatross. For any British viewers, yes, that is the music from the M&S adverts. Already with these songs, you can see how different Fleetwood Mac used to be. This era of the band has gone on to become known as Peter Green's Fleetwood Mac. In this era, which saw a fair amount of lineup changes, the band was not really focused on writing hit singles, like the later version of the band would be. Instead, they were experimental, psychedelic, and lengthy.
Because if you look at Fleetwood Mac, the amount of different music that we played, we almost don't have any right to have survived, you know.
The debut album was a mix of classic blues covers and originals, and it showcased a lack of polish and flawlessness. It was more like a live album.
Won't shake her money maker. I want her all, I keep begging. She won't shake her money maker.
In the same year, they released Mr. Wonderful, their second album, and stuck with the same blues theme. They even added additional musicians, saxophones, harmonicas, and keyboards. However, from there, Fleetwood Mac, or Peter Green's Fleetwood Mac, truly found its footing. 1969's Then Play On saw the band growing up and heading into a new direction. A lot of the credit for this album goes to 19-year-old Danny Kirwan, who'd now joined the band. Kirwan would be instrumental in expanding the Fleetwood Mac sound for the better. This album saw the band using the studio like never before, harmonised guitars and riffs that shift from pure blues to early hard rock. The band experimented with maracas, bongos, strings, and shifts in style. The album was a turning point for them in experimentation. In 1970, they released the single The Green Manalishi with the two-prong crown, and that's a great example of this era's more psychedelic stuff. And that would be the last top 10 hit from them in the UK until 1979. From here, the band would go through more lineup changes, including Peter Green's departure and the addition of John McVie's wife Christine, both in 1970. Mick Fleetwood would stay in contact, on and off, with Peter Green. And according to Fleetwood, Peter Green wanted to be just Peter Green, rather than Peter Green of Fleetwood Mac. Green was also taking heavy doses of LSD around this time, a possible trigger for his later mental health decline. He was diagnosed with schizophrenia in the mid-70s. Jeremy Spencer left in 1971 for the Children of God cult. And the less said about that, the better, really. Bob Welch joined afterwards. Though Bob would leave the band in 1974, he was a key player in the band's sound during this time. Some critics point to his contributions as a sort of bridge between the pre- and post-Nicks and Buckingham eras. And the band continued to experiment from album to album. The lineup would continue to evolve throughout the years, but I don't have the time or sanity to list every single change, just FYI. 1971's Future Games could be seen as a precursor to the sort of sound Fleetwood Mac would deliver with Rumours. However, the final track on 1972's Bare Trees was simply a poem read by a woman the band lived nearby.
I thank my God for perfect love and peace. I'll hold her tight and always as always, mine forever. Love, love, so great, so divine. Trees, the grey day has changed everything.
Now, you wouldn't get that on Rumours, would you? The point I'm trying to make here, and a point that's made clear by the fact that the band's history is generally split into two eras, is that listening to Fleetwood Mac before and after Nicks and Buckingham joined is a very different experience. With their arrival, the band shifted from that psychedelic experimental sound to polished pop rock with catchier hooks and memorable choruses and greater commercial success. Their biggest Billboard Hot 100 hits, for example, Dreams, Don't Stop, Go Your Own Way, You Make Loving Fun, and Little Lies, were all written by Nicks, Christine McVie, or Buckingham. And don't get me wrong, I am absolutely not saying that one era is better than the other, but if you compare Peter Green's Fleetwood Mac with the Nicks era, the difference is pretty clear. Given the massive influence of Nicks, Buckingham, and McVie, it's sometimes easy to overlook what Peter Green and the original lineup achieved in their brief time together. So just how did Nicks and Buckingham make their entrance, and how did they change Fleetwood Mac's sound? Well, in 1974, the band relocated to America, and after Heroes Are Hard to Find, Bob Welch left the group. And this was a shock to Mick Fleetwood, and now the band needed a new guitarist. A chance encounter not long before that would make that an easy decision. Mick Fleetwood was just out buying groceries when he bumped into an old PR friend near his place in Laurel Canyon. The friend invited him to check out a newly revamped recording studio nearby called Sound City. When Fleetwood showed up, Keith Olsen, the in-house engineer, played him a track that he'd produced the year before just to show off the studio's sound. The song was Frozen Love by a local duo, Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks. Their album had flopped, and they had been dropped by their label, but Mick Fleetwood was hooked. He later wrote that Frozen Love was 7 enchanting minutes of vocal harmony and dynamic guitar. Mick made contact with Lindsey Buckingham and asked him to join Fleetwood Mac. However, Lindsey would only accept if Stevie Nicks could come along with him, as a sort of package deal. They were like-minded, they wrote together, lived together, loved together. They were very much what Fleetwood Mac was all about. Suddenly, Fleetwood Mac had 3 top-notch singer-songwriters, and the first album the new lineup would work on was appropriately titled Fleetwood Mac. It was self-titled, marking a rebirth, a new starting point. It felt right. It was very quick. We all liked each other, and that was it. We rehearsed for 10 days and went in and made the album. It was a great sense of circumstance. Soon the album was done and landed 3 top 20 singles: Over My Head, Say You Love Me, and Rhiannon. While it took 57 weeks for the album to climb to number 1 in the US, it was a turning point. They had gone from psychedelic, experimental blues to more mainstream pop rock superstars. There's not a lot of bands on this planet with such a dramatic evolution. If you can think of any, leave them in the comments. From there, of course, they would go on to deliver Rumours, an album that would become one of the greatest and best-selling albums of all time. Despite its recording process being drenched in affairs, cocaine, heartbreak, and divorce. And after the monumental radio-friendly success of Rumours, the band went in a completely different direction. Again, they said no to the label execs that asked for a Rumours sequel and went completely rogue. It turned out to be one of the most significant albums in their history. So significant, it warrants its own entire video. Click there for that one next.